Hello again, I'm Kenny Fikes, your host of the iKnow Media Roundtable, where we bring you conscientious clarity through empirical experience alongside reasoned application and analysis. Today's show, Trumpism and its effect on relationships, even long-term ones, more so race. We'll get back to that in a second, but let's go around the horn.
Hey guys, I'm Elisa Simmons. I'm a Montessori guide in East Texas, and I am unhappy that we get to have this conversation tonight, but let's do it.
Hi everyone, I'm Jay Ellis. I am a mom of three. I'm an obstetrician gynecologist, and I'm a disability advocate. And so some disclosure here. When we start our shows, we smile, we're trying to be warm and welcoming. We smile. It was hard for me to keep smiling when the topic came up. I'm gonna be real honest with you, because this last 4 years has made me have to question relationships that I have and people who I was frankly very disappointed in, because they were willing to support an administration that would be willing to suppress me and the people that I love.
Michael Malowski. I am a pediatrician in Denver, Colorado, parent of 7, and I have not yet had any relationships suffer over this, because mostly we keep it out of the conversation in my family. But I certainly have been hearing a lot about this topic, so I'm looking forward to hearing what everyone has to say.
Well, so what spurred the topic for me is, got to put it in perspective again. Growing up in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, I'm not, a guy who grew up as a black kid in an inner city somewhere where I didn't experience white people until later in life. I mean, I've never not known not having white friends and black friends. It was always probably 80, 20, 70, 30 because of school. That's where I grew up. So it's not strange to have friends of all flavors. Having said that, after growing up together in boarding school, that's even different. When you go to school together from 9th through 12th grade, you're like brothers and sisters at some level. And the people that you're close to. And the people that you're not close to, you still know them very well. And so what spurred this for me today was just sort of getting sick of certain people making excuses for Donald Trump. And the reason is, I think that unless you are, I don't want to use these terrible negative words, but unless you're stupid, I just want to say it, highly unintelligent, illiterate, incapable of putting together a thought for yourself, and you just follow your emotions and the area in which you're in, I don't think there's any other reason to make an excuse for Donald Trump and who he is as a person anymore. It's out in the open. You can't have it both ways. And so I'm going to read what led me to want to talk about this today real quick. One of my comments on Facebook, and it was aimed at, I'm not going to read his name. I'm going to say name when I get to it. So I'll start here. He was making a lot of excuses for Donald Trump. Smart guy, lives in Seattle, Washington, professional, blah, blah, blah. Actually, he's an old blue blood money Boston guy. So I wrote, I believe the economy was also in the works as well, because he was talking about Trump's effectiveness in the Middle East. And one of my other friends from high school, who was Egyptian, was saying, but trust me, that was all in the works anyway. He's taking credit for a lot of stuff. So I say the economy was in the works as well also. I also don't think you can talk about one thing without the other. I don't know how you continue to defend and push Trump forward name unless you feel like he does about the world. We're way past policy and static analysis by the numbers alone. When he is a person who is not a deal, when who he is as a person is not a deal breaker, that's a serious conversation to be had or not. When anyone I know with a brain can promote Donald Trump openly, then the reality is that he has divided us, as in Donald Trump. He's just flushed out who we really are. There's no two ways about it for me anymore on this subject. I want to be clear. When unabashed racism is no longer a deal breaker in political choices, it is a deal breaker for friendship. We've moved, so that's what I said. The first thing I said. Start us off, Jay.
Well, with Trump, there are a lot of deal breakers, honestly. Racism is one, but so is sexism. I'm still puzzled and baffled by the women who chose to vote for him after hearing that Access Hollywood video. I just don't understand this. I also don't understand, what Christians are saying, the ones who support him, how his lack of humanity, his lack of compassion, his lack of respect, his lying ways. I mean, he's just the antithesis of everything that we say Jesus would be. When we ask what would Jesus do, well, let me tell you, it wouldn't be what Donald Trump does. So all of these things, though, are not deal breakers for the people who support him. It almost feels like, this has got to be a joke, because maybe it's like, is somebody just testing us to see how terrible we're willing to be? There is very little about Donald Trump that makes him redeeming as a president and as a person, for as much as we know. Now, maybe behind closed doors, he's a gem, but I don't believe that. But what we see is somebody that we cannot look up to. It's hard to respect. He doesn't respect others. And so there's so many things that should be deal breakers. For me, also the fact that he thinks it's okay to mock somebody who has a disability. I have a real problem with that because I have a son with a disability. And that means to me, if you could do that, then you wouldn't support any policy or legislation that would help him to thrive. As a matter of fact, you would be likely to support legislation that would get in the way of his success and his health and happiness. So there are a lot of deal breakers there, but racism, of course, because I think race is one of those things that we clearly are still struggling with, and we will be for some time. I think what happened to us in the last 4 years was that we got to find out people that we didn't think were racist really are. And whether or not they intended to be almost isn't the point. When we start to explain the toxicity in the race issue that comes from this man, that's what really pisses you off. When people, instead of just saying, I never thought about it that way, it didn't affect me and I didn't think about it that way. Now that I have, maybe this is not someone I want to support. But instead you have those people who kind of just double down on it. And they're going to make excuses for the unexcusable.
So I mentioned to you guys on our last show that I found out as an adult I have a brother. We've been developing and have a good relationship. Well, I was talking to him about this yesterday, last night. He said what he finds to be a common thread with people who continue to double down on Trump is that they don't read. He's like, these are people that don't read. But anyway, that's just something he said. Michael and Elisa, I know Michael, I'm sorry, Michael, I see a white person on the screen, but you don't want to be, it's yours. Nevertheless.
That's a separate show, Kenny, separate show.
So with that said, is it possible to be cognizant as an intelligent person and not conclude, help me if there is a way, I'm listening, and not conclude that Donald Trump is truly a racist? Is that possible?
So, I think most of you guys know that I don't spend a lot of time in this space, but I can just tell you what I hear around me. For instance, there are still very conservative segments of the religious community I live in that support Donald Trump, oddly enough, ironically enough. And I still listen. One of the podcasts I still listen to, and I don't know if you guys ever heard of him, Ben Shapiro. He's an Orthodox Jewish guy, but he's a rapidly right-wing dude. He stopped short of I think excusing Donald Trump's behavior. I think stops very short of it. But so I'm used to some of the language that I have heard used to try and at least justify or rationalize supporting Trump, but most of it has to do with denigrating the other side. It has very little to do generally with espousing anything positive about this person, except it almost always involves, yeah, but Joe Biden or fill in the blank, or what about blah, 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 blah. Short of Candace Owens, and I know how much Jay Shree loves to talk about Candace Owens, but there are very few, I think, people of any kind of right-wing minority persuasion that can honestly and look in the camera and with real intellectual congruency, I suppose, support or say anything in support of him without having to justify it or rationalize it by just sort of bringing down what they perceive as the other side. I still find it baffling how the faith-based community embraces this person. Especially, listen, I don't know anything about being evangelical Christian. Certainly I'm the opposite of that. I don't know anything about it. But any community of faith, and that I think any person of faith would get a lot out of. Rabbi Soloveitchik wrote a book called Lonely Man of Faith, which talks about what a faith community is. He talked about it, not discussing anything specifically Jewish about it at all, but talking about that people of faith who live in a faith-based community, you're often pulled between two very big extremes, the need to conquer and win and produce and make money and be successful. And at the same time, you're pulled the other direction by the calling towards humility and service and integrity and all of those inward qualities, what David Brooks referred to as resume values and eulogy values. You know, a person of faith is caught in between those two extremes if you're serious, and how a community that can label itself as if a serious faith-based community can at all align with this person.
So I think so what you're getting into is something I read earlier, and I wish I had my hands on it and I could read it to you guys. But it was a woman who is Christian and really feels strongly about abortion. She's very much pro-life, and she just had to write something. I think I sent it to you guys, and she essentially said, "Look, you know, I had to have a come to Jesus talk with myself and say, if I'm really a Christian, I can't be this one issue Christian. When we talk about all the other things and all the values that are espoused in the Bible, and how much more they're talked about than this single issue of abortion. So Can I justify supporting this man based on pro-life and maybe being against gay marriage, and then throw out all the other values, which may be what the not resume, but the tombstone, eulogy values?
Eulogy values and resume values.
Yeah. So what do you think, Elisa?
I feel like y'all need to let me have an iKnow table just for my white people. Michael can't be involved because we know he's not white. So not white. But it needs to be a come to Jesus. No, well, you know what? This is what I'm having to hold on to. And I know that a lot of people don't agree with it, but because everyone views things based on their life story and what they've been exposed to and the walk that they've had in this journey. And so I have a large amount of family members who are well educated, who are Trump supporters. I have family members who are at church Wednesdays and Sundays and host camp events and are hardcore involved in their church, who are Trump supporters. And it does baffle me. I do not understand it. I do understand it because I know them, but I don't understand it because I know them, if that makes sense. Like, it does. Like, I know them because I know they're Republican and they're ride or die Republicans. But I also know that they don't know that they're racist. As someone I'm thinking of specifically, super subconsciously racist, and that's what gets me. And I think though that if you find yourself having to defend someone nonstop, above and beyond their job title, like Barack Obama, I didn't have to defend his job title very much. For the most part, I didn't have to defend very much about him. Everybody's like, now he's really articulate. And so there wasn't a lot to defend about him, but if you have to translate your leader nonstop, you need to, it's baffling. Like, come on, like, you can do better. But Kenny, if I don't have to see you at Christmas, my ability to tolerate your Trump support is as low as yours. If I don't need to see you at Christmas, I know it's not going to break my mom's heart if I cuss you out. I don't need you in my world. I mean, you're not safe. I don't trust you. And I question your judgment nonstop. So, I mean, I get where you are with your friend, because it's not worth it.
Well, and so I think what happens in those scenarios, you talk about people bring their life experience to the table. There's a book written by Swami something, I can't remember. I couldn't even pronounce his name if I were looking at, but Swami something. And the title of the book is Wherever You Go, There You Are. It speaks for itself. I think that's true for all of us, but some of us have an interest in growing beyond that at some point instead of just standing in the quicksand. And so I guess I have to respectfully say, yeah, and I'm not talking about your family specifically.
Yeah.
People who are educated, people who are at church on Sunday night, Monday, I just don't buy it. I don't buy it. I think they're standing firm on it with the what about defenses, and they cannot defend the character of this man. I think they have the same values as he does, and they just won't say it. If you read, like I said, if your eyes are open, you're aware of what's going on in the world. There's no way you can't know who he is. So when you stand up and support him, you're really saying that grabbing women by the peas is not a deal breaker. Saying that the Jews will not replace us is not a deal breaker. Saying that African countries are shithole countries. Saying that Mexicans are rapists and thugs and that's why they want to come here. None of those things are deal breakers. I really don't give a damn what they say about Jesus and anything else. I don't buy it. They hide behind it. That's what I think. What do you got, Jay?
You know, I think that there are some people who support Trump because they really look at the economics of it for them. And these are a lot of people who are educated, people who might be of some wealth, and they're looking at what's going on with their taxes. They're looking at the things that they don't want to pay for, right? Where they feel, hey, if we got to pay too much for Medicaid, well, those people are slouches. They don't deserve it. We're not trying to pay for universal health care. I want my money, right? I don't want to give you any extra money. And you Democrats and liberals, that's what y'all are trying to have happen here. So I think there are some people who look at it, they really compartmentalize it. The thing I have to say about them, however, is if that's the case, just own it and say, listen, what I give a damn about is my taxes. I love you, Jay, and your kids are cool and all of that, but what matters to me is my money. And I feel that he's looking out for my money. I can respect that way more than you try to rationalize and explain to me why this fool is not racist. And you will say to me that there is a conspiracy, like everybody's just against Donald Trump, trying to make him look bad. And everything that is presented to you, stuff that's on tape, audio tape, videotape, you will discount it. And you'd rather say it's a conspiracy, it's alternative facts, it's fake news. And they read, because they read that nonsense that's written to support what they want to believe. They read, and that's even a scarier person, because they'll pull some article from a very right-wing publication to tell you why their position is correct. I have less respect for that because it's so blatant. You can't defend this. When you start defending this, you look like a liar. You look like you have no integrity, and I have no respect for that. But I would have respect for somebody who just said, it's about my money. I need you to not say anything to me about this again. I'm gonna vote for that.
Not only do I agree with you, there are Black people in that boat. There are Black people who vote for Trump because of a single issue like abortion, or a single issue like they're anti-gay marriage, or they're wealthy and it's about their money and they vote for Trump because, unlike me, who feels like we're on the precipice of, the end of the world. I'm exaggerating slightly, but the end of the world with all these guys and shotguns and Trump declaring martial law. They don't think that there's any chance of that, but there are Black people who do the same thing, Jay. And so you're absolutely right. But where I think that they know they're lying when they pull that right-wing article from Breitbart and they'll almost, I think I had this experience with someone. You ever seen someone who's lying to you and they sort of go, like smile in a way? I don't know if anyone's ever had that experience.
Yeah, you see the body language change.
I've had a conversation with someone like that and they sort of smile like you got me, but this is what I'm gonna say. It was about the money. Now, like Jay, if they just said, look, I'm worried about my money and don't talk to me about Trump again, I get it. But still, for that person, racism is not a deal breaker. And if they're Black, they're what you call, they're what you call a sellout. There's no amount of money that could make me openly support him. But anyway, what you got, Michael?
So I want to remind the group, I think of a thing about this we've talked about, and you know, I see so much of the passion on both sides. I have come around to more of the George Conway stance on this, that and that Jay Shree is nodding, because I know that, you know, as a physician, I think that there's actually a diagnosis here. You know, I think you can get passionate about it because if you actually think that Trump has a value system and that he's actually expressing a value system, I understand how you can get passionate. I believe Trump is valueless. I believe truly he has no value system. I have read, the more I read from preeminent psychiatric and mental health professionals who have spent hours observing and listening to him in all settings, the man truly has a narcissistic personality disorder by definition. And when I've looked it up in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of mental health diagnoses, he is literally textbook, which means he has no values. He is a shell that stands only for what is expedient and directs attention to elevate himself and his own ego's view of himself, and that is his only value. So all of these things, he really doesn't. I mean, he may be a racist, you're right, and but he really doesn't have a value at all of any kind. Because outside of simply wanting to feed the ego, which for him is literally his entire being, that's where I think he is. And so it's hard. You can get passionate all you want, but he doesn't really care about any of this stuff because he cares only about one thing.
And he may not even have a moral compass.
No.
But the issue today and now, as much as I used his name, is not him. The issue are the people who are supporting him with their bullshit rhetoric. The issue are the people who support him and they don't have anything to stand for. They have things and people to hate and rail against. And what about defenses and Benghazi and all that nonsense, right? That's the issue for me. Yeah. Trump is that Frankenstein that Dr. Frankenstein created that's coming back to eat him up. The issue is Mitch McConnell. The issue is Lindsey Graham. The issue are these governors that are afraid of him. That's the issue. So yes, he may be valueless, and he may have no personal values. He may have no moral compass, but he's the leader of the free world right now, theoretically. And it's the people who are allowing his lack of values to perpetrate these things. And so, as I've said before, one of the greatest in my life political lines I've ever heard was Andrew Gillum saying to Ron DeSantis in Florida in the gubernatorial debate, Mr. DeSantis, I'm not calling you a racist, but the racists believe you're a racist.
Well, that's the thing, is that he's such an empty shell. He literally can be people can just slide their hand in and he's a puppet for whatever value they want to ascribe to him. And they're successful as long as they go, Donald, what a wonderful guy, and take the ego approach. He'll morph into whatever value they want to represent if he feels like have you guys heard of this QAnon nonsense that's going on online and that's fomenting a lot of violence? And when Donald Trump was asked about it, his only response was, well, I've heard that they like me. Like, he couldn't respond to the fact that this entire thing was fomenting a bunch of ridiculous, baseless nonsense to stoke violence about underground, politicians selling children back and forth. I mean, it was such ridiculous stuff. And his only response is, well, I hear they like me. Like, he's such an empty shell. He can't. He has no position. And by the way, Kenny, I have to correct you. Wherever you go, there you are was originally stated by Buckaroo Banzai in the 1984 movie Buckaroo Banzai Across the Eighth Dimension. It was not this guy. This guy took it from that movie. I didn't
say it was original, but it is kind of a book, and it's by Swami something. So let's go around the horn. We're going to go Jay, Elisa, Michael, and tell me what you say to the white person who's intelligent and goes on a rail supporting Donald Trump. What do you say to him, Jay?
In my experience, you can't say anything. I mean, you can say what you want, but it really is futile, particularly for the person who is educated and can read and does read, because those people are going to be much harder to present a factual case. They don't want the facts. They've decided on what their facts are. So I don't say anything to them anymore. There are other people that I will engage when I feel like theirs comes from a position of sheer ignorance, right? And I'll continue having that conversation with them as long as it's respectful. But for folks who are educated, and I don't know damn well they are, and they find what they want to read and they find what they want to justify any policy thinking attitude of his, at this point, I just, why am I wasting my time? Because they don't want to be convinced, because they want to believe what they want to believe. It's different when you just don't know. And then there's another scenario when you've decided, this is what I want to think. This is what I want to believe in and hold on to. And who's going to convince you? And so at this point, I don't say anything to those people anymore. I don't.
Elisa.
I asked, are we great yet? Like, did we go back to the greatness? Because I see where we're at. It reminds me of what I've heard about in history. So I see where we're at. Like, is this the time period you wanted? And I'll also point out my biggest one, though, the biggest argument I have is, would Donald Trump allow you to immigrate to America? Would he put value on what you bring to the table and want you here? Because I know some people he would like me, but I'm like, well, not once he heard me speak. If he watched these, he wouldn't. But on paper, I contribute to the country. I don't bleed anything from the country. I'm highly intelligent. My husband's highly intelligent. I own a company that is successful. He would let me and my family immigrate here on paper if race was skipped and podcast or series were skipped, and he couldn't see that. But I know a lot of people that support Donald Trump who he would not allow immigrate to the country. And once I say that to someone, they pretty much have to, well, you're just being extreme like you always are. But that's my go-to. Would he let you immigrate here? Michael, what do you have?
I talk to a lot of people during the day who are anti-vaccine. And I've learned that this type of worldview, people, and most of them are educated, most of them have college degrees and graduate degrees. And what they've done is they put themselves in an echo chamber, and they have surrounded themselves only with views that resonate with how they feel. So it simply just reinforces those things all the time. And they cherry pick and choose the things only that speak to their side of it. So as someone who does this for a living and who clearly has the background, the ability to try and paint a picture, they're unable to hear it. It's like trying to talk someone out of their religion. It would be like you trying to talk me out of being Jewish. There is a certain amount of faith that goes along with it, and therefore I really won't be able to hear the discussion, because in my mind I'm always going to be able to find what I want because it emotionally resonates with me. I believe that the way Jay presented it also, it is exactly the same thing with what you said, thinking educated people who hold this very intense view. You cannot and really can't talk people out of it. And it's not because the world is very different. The world of information is very different than it was 20 years ago when people could have a disagreement, but they actually had, everyone had access to the same information and everyone was talking from the same page. The fact that people now live in echo chambers of their own design make it almost impossible to be able to even start a productive conversation with someone who holds this kind of view. Just like it's just like talking to someone who's anti-vaccine.
Wow, that was pretty deep.
I'm a deep guy. I mean, what can I tell you?
People live in echo chambers of their own design. Wow. And I couldn't talk you out of being Jewish. Okay. Well,
I mean, maybe you could, Kenny Fikes, because I didn't want to be you when I was in college. So that would be easier for you perhaps than others.
So here are my two. I'm going to leave the middle people alone. I'm going to tell you the thesis of what I say to the poor white person and the thesis of what I say to the wealthy white person. The thesis to the poor white person is Malcolm X. You've been hacked, hoodwinked, led astray, bamboozled, run amok. Donald Trump does not love you. He does not give a damn about you. If this were the Hunger Games, your ass would be in one of the districts. You would not be in the city sipping champagne. He don't care about you one way or the other, and you continue to vote against your own best interests economically and socially and programmatically and everything else. And just like that poem by Martin Nemo, at first he came for those, then he came for those, he's coming for your poor ass. That's what I'll say to them. If you let him another 2 or 3 terms, if that happened. What I say to the wealthy white person is, so let's go back down to the poor one. And that's about the fear. As long as you can be better than someone else, he makes you feel better than other people. That boosts you. Go to the top of them economically, particularly ones with old money and trust funds. Well, you guys like the way it's set up as the 1%ers of the 1% of the 1%ers, because that's what he's shooting for you guys to hold on to that and to further that divide. And you're afraid that people are going to figure you out, that you never really earned anything for yourself in your life anyway. And so you don't like a fair playing field. You like it when people believe that it's because someone's a woman that they got the job. You like it when people believe in affirmative action. You like to stir the pot because you just might get figured out that you didn't do it on your own. And this system of white privilege has greatly benefited you, and it continues to benefit you. And that's what you're arguing, and that's what you're afraid of losing. That's what I say to him.
Probably doesn't get much of a response.
With that said,
it's kind of like and Michael will know what I'm talking about. When we do our psychiatry rotation in medical school, we start learning about things like schizophrenia, and we start learning about delusional disorders, right? So I recall an attending physician saying to me, this is what you need to understand about delusions. It does not matter what factual evidence you have and that you may present to this patient who's in the midst of a delusional crisis. If they believe that somebody is out to get them, or they think that one person is out to kill them, there is nothing you can do to prove otherwise, because this is a fixed belief for them. And not that I want to say that Trump supporters have psychiatric illness, because truthfully, I feel that would be insulting to people who truly suffer psychiatric. However, I'm serious. But it's kind of like this. It doesn't even make sense to talk to people who've decided that they're going to hold so tightly to these beliefs that are clearly not supported by anything this man has done. And you know, you don't need to engage with them. But I think for the very wealthy, I'm not surprised that they don't want him to leave office. You know, I mean, really, I can't be mad at them. Hell, if I was uber wealthy, I might be like, keep him there too. People do not want to let go of their stronghold, right? And if they've always been in power, yeah, they see the threat to their power and to their status. So I understand that, but that's not most of the country. Most of the country is not even wealthy, much less uber wealthy. And for many of the people that we're talking about, they didn't get the jobs that he promised he would keep here in America, right? He tried to take their health care, which he told them he was going to do. And then they were surprised when he actually tried. If by this point, 4 years in, those people can't look at their personal and financial situations and realize that this man was not in their corner, I'm not sure there's anything that I could say that would make them feel differently.
Yeah. Well, I thought that was interesting that you say it would be an insult to people who really do suffer from those illnesses. So reminding you what made me want to talk about this today, I'll read the last thing I wrote on that today. This guy came back and started the what about and railing about Joe Biden. He didn't defend Donald Trump. He railed about Joe Biden. And I wrote this for the last time. I said, Trump isn't responsible. He's a symptom, and now he's the leader. Continue pretending you don't understand that. And as long as you do with the distractions, no matter how well they're presented, you're simply ignoring who this man is. Finally, the what about defense is beyond old and tired. What if Joe Biden is a racist? I wasn't talking about him, but that's not the point. You will simply not say what is true, and your denial and unwillingness to do so speaks volumes. That's it.
I remember when I was our first psychiatric rotation, our psychiatric attending stood up and he was talking about personality disorders, Jay, and he said, you know, we're not going to talk a lot about personality disorders. We're just going to say that all of you know somebody with a personality disorder. You know them as assholes.
Got it. All right, folks. Well, this has been fun. Elisa, got anything to add at the end here?
You know what? Trump's slogan, make America great again. If we want to make America great, it's going to take us. It's going to take boots on the ground. It's going to take the citizens. You have to be kind to each other. You need to be understanding of each other, and you need to stop blindly following someone who has, in 3.5 short years, long years for some, created something that none of us ever thought we would see in our lifetime. So if you really want America to be great again, you have to decide to do work. And I think that's what, as Americans, we need to remember. And I think for the ones that are anti-Trump getting another 4 years, you need to show up and vote. You need to drive people to vote. You need to vote, and you need to vote and vote and vote as legally and as responsibly as you can. And for everybody else, you just have to try to be kind and don't buy into their crazy.
Don't buy. Here are photos of America today, and this is going to be somebody else's America. In the spirit of levity, Michael and Jay, you guys talked about this a little bit. I saw a bumper sticker. It's been over 10 years, but I've never forgotten it. A bumper sticker that said, "It really is as bad as you think it is, and they really are out to get you." It was a real bumper sticker. All right. Good night, guys. Good night.
Good night, guys.